This is Scott McDonald of Dr. Demographics, and as you'll note, we're not in our normal studio. That is, as it sometimes happens, we're on the road. So, with that in mind, I want you to be patient as I explain to you a trend which is not exactly comfortable. Today, we're going to be talking about Idaho's housing wobble. Now, most of the locations in the United States are wobbling right now, which means they have been fundamentally firm and fantastic. And some locations that you would have sworn are never going to go down are getting a little bit scary. So let me explain a little bit more about what I mean by the Idaho and specifically the Boise wobble. Now, Idaho's housing wobble is not as big as you're going to find it in other locations. And I chose Idaho specifically because we've gotten so used to hearing month after month and even year after year that states like Idaho are no lose. But they're beginning to be a little bit scary for some people. And I want you to understand what that means. Now, what goes up surely will come down. We understand that. The trends influencing where to put a practice may be starting to shift. Now, it is true that this is a national trend, and in some locations, it's hitting much more heavily than in others. So, what do we mean by the wobble? Well, now please pay close attention to what I'm going to talk about, because it's not necessarily well understood. And some demographers are really shouting from the rooftops that some locations are fantastic and others not doing so great. Now, all housing and employment trends are going to change in a very short time. That is going to happen. Now, sometimes the shifts are subtle. Sometimes they're big, but they are inevitable. Now, what I'm saying with a national trend like this, it's going to shift, just not as much in some locations. Now, for several years, housing prices were steadily upward bound throughout the entire country. It has been true in Idaho, which has basically led the market. But the trend may be reversing itself, and you need to pay attention as to why and what's causing it. Now, that's the only way you're going to be able to predict the future. Interest rates are due to increase. That's going to happen. No location is immune, and this is going to have an influence on the price of housing everywhere. Now, when the price of housing goes up, other indicators are also at risk. It's even true for Boise, Idaho. Practice prices are going to shift as well. That's inevitable. Housing prices have been crazy high. They've been going up, and they haven't shown any sign of going down. For the most part, that's true nationally, but it's not going to be true in every place, and certainly not as much in other places. There are some indicators that even stalwart locations like Boise, Idaho, are moderating their property values. They aren't exactly declining, but they are changing, and that's what I want to talk to you about. It does not mean that Boise and similar places are starting looking bad. They're not. So if you were to say, Scott, is Phoenix, Arizona going to be bad? Well, I'm going to say no. And like Boise, it's going to continue to retain its value better than other places. I don't think the entire market is going to fall apart. So people call me all the time and they say, Scott, should I buy a practice or not? Look, if you can get into a practice, you're going to be better off than not. And sooner is better than later. I'll explain a little bit more later. But it does mean that the trends must be reviewed and revised periodically. In the last year, inventory did not keep up with demand for homes, for office space, and for available practices. So a lot of people are frustrated and they're saying, I can't find a practice to buy, and I certainly can't find one that's reasonably priced. Well, that is certainly true. But about 32% of price increases this year in housing, and by the way, that's how much on a national level housing prices have gone up. That's scary. But demand could be cooling marginally in values. So in other words, the demand for housing may actually be going down. especially in certain places. Now, we'll see. But the wobble could be part of a national trend. At some point, this hot community, as all others, will moderate. So I'm saying Boise is not going to be as good tomorrow as it is today. I think the wobble is real. Still, relative to most places, and I'm going to throw in California, New York, and Illinois, the fundamentals are going to continue. Are they permanent? Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Is Idaho going to be permanently a good place, or will it go through ups and downs? I think fluctuations are going to occur in Montana, Utah, Arizona, Texas, and Florida. The bet is not on when the trends will reverse themselves. It's not really so much a matter of if. The bet is where they're going to be more stable than other places. So we know it's going to change. When it's going to change is not exactly sure, but we know that in time you're going to have to make a decision. Now, what trends appear to be permanent? Individual places may shift and jockey for benefit. And I've listed the states that show the most promise before. So please go to my former episodes that will talk about the 10 states that I think are really going to be better investments. But even those states are still going to be in trouble a little bit. Now, some trends appear permanent and are getting stronger. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Folks are leaving urban areas for suburbs. That's true in almost every state. People are not going to be in crowded areas. They don't want that in the post-pandemic world. Places where staff are living may be your best hope. I'm saying this, if you go to an urban area where it's expensive for people to rent, it's going to be hard to find staff people that you can afford to employ. That's going to be a current problem. That's why suburb and rural locations are going to be better investments, particularly if you're thinking about how much you have to pay staff. Mass transit is losing. It's losing significantly. It's down 53% ridership. So when people are saying, but we've got subways, we've got buses, well, that's lovely, but it's not helping. In fact, if cities and counties have invested heavily in public transportation, it's a counter indicator. It means that may not be the best place to go. Natural growth is a key indicator. Now, what I mean by this is, yeah, it is a very nice thing when lots and lots of people move into an area through migration, but it's even better when people are having babies. So the natural growth means the birth rate is up. When the birth rate is down in an area and way down, you're going to have a problem. Now, Hawaii, New York, and New Jersey are at the top of the list for locations that are in a wobble situation. That means that there are fluctuations in housing prices and availability and new construction are going to be tough. So Hawaii, New York, and New Jersey are at the top of the list of the wobble. The point is that all states have parts that are unstable, all states. Therefore, include the coastal parts of California, Washington, and Oregon, particularly. That's where the greatest wobble is occurring. Before you consider purchasing a practice, I'm going to strongly suggest that you get an analysis from Dr. Demographics. The market profile is probably the least expensive and most accurate way for you to determine what the trends are going to be in the future. Louisiana, New Mexico, and even Nevada are showing signs of value fluctuation in places. Is the wobble coming? Maybe. But you see, these three states, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Nevada, are potentially looking better and better. And before they were not. Hey, Michigan and Colorado are really bucking the wobble trend, though. If you want to know two states that I'm seriously looking at for practices, Michigan and Colorado, especially outside of Greater Denver, are looking pretty darn good. That is favorable for you. Now, if you want to talk to one of our analysts, You go to 800-849-0499, set up an appointment, and we'll discuss the locations that you consider most interesting and most important. I'm going to tell you that one of the best things we do is competition analysis. It's not just a ratio of the number of practices per population. It's what direction and what type of growth and development is going on in that area. So the competition analysis in the practice viability study is really what I'm recommending. And you can get more information by going to drdemographics.com. We want to help you make good decisions. You got to do your research during this very, very unstable time. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you later. Bye-bye.